first I ever downloaded, I do remember. It was, that's really embarrassing.
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger.
And welcome to The Middle,
Where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics.
On our search to find the middle.
We're going to give you last week's news today.
It's a slogan, we should put that on a t-shirt.
Stop touching her!
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Taylor Swift. Look, my biggest issue with marriage is that I think that it's a fundamentally flawed institution that is built on the oppression of women.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Having truly rational conversations about controversial issues is risky these days.
G'day, Roger.
Andy, how you doing?
Not too bad. What's news?
Took the kids to Luna Park the other weekend. When's the last time you've been to Luna Park?
Ooh, before COVID, but not 20 years or something.
Luna Park, for our listeners, is one of the oldest amusement parks in Sydney. And it's right on the harbour, it overlooks the bridge.
It's the only amusement park in Sydney.
Oh, is it?
Oh, I think so. There's no.
What about the one that we grew up with the dipper and shit?
Hey, dude, that closed like in 2004. What planet have you been living on?
What was it called? Dreamworld. Yeah, Dreamworld.
No, Dreamworld's in Queensland.
What am I thinking of?
Wonderland.
Wonderland.
That closed like decades ago.
Oh, I thought they reopened somehow in the West. No?
Yeah. I mean, anything west of Olympic Park is the western suburbs to you.
Oh, come on. Anyway, so Luna Park, historic place. This is the old. It's definitely the oldest, right? And now, okay, maybe the only. It's going to be expensive, but they it's outrageously expensive. They really hang you by your ankles and just empty out everything. It's like crazy. I mean, you spend so much money, and for what it is, it's old. It's kind of decrepit. It's very small. The lines are kind of outrageously long. And yeah, it was my kids loved it. It was torture for me.
Well, speaking of childhood memories that cost a lot of money, did you ever used to use like Napster or Pirate Bay, those kind of ones?
I used LimeWire. That was the first one I used, which was.
Were you downloading like individual songs to make up the whole album?
Oh, definitely. Downloading MP3 songs and things like that. And then later, I got into the whole BitTorrent thing, like Pirate Bay, where you could actually download movies and things like of that nature. But I think, I'm not sure whether it was yourself. Maybe we shouldn't divulge too much here, but it was someone in our close contacts that was they were the pirate king. They were the Johnny Depp of the seas. And so most of the time they would just bring a hard disk over and you could just take from them rather than downloading it yourself.
Do you know, I remember going to Blockbuster Video and renting like how they used to have like seven weeklies for $7,
oh, yeah.
Those kind of specials, doing that and then like copying the discs.
Oh, copying it?
Yeah. And just having this big portfolio of like DVD movies. I don't think I ever watched them even.
That's amazing.
It was just this, I don't know, it's just this feeling of like building what like today is almost like a Netflix library.
Yeah.
But like back in old school tech.
Like piracy and stuff is quite big in Asian culture, especially like Southeast Asian culture, where you can get a lot of it. There's stalls everywhere. Whenever you go back to Malaysia and all these places, they literally have huge piracy markets out in the open, right? And even before that, we had family friends and uncles who had the dual-VCR setup, where they would use it to actually like copy like from one VHS cassette to another. That was incredible. So they would literally dub it in that way.
My dad used to rent, I think, classical music they used to have at the library. So he used to go to the library, get the CDs, and then record them to tape.
Oh, yeah.
To have them like
Good
on
as
tape.
that.
And I remember it was just this ritual that he did like every weekend. And I actually said to him the other day, I said, because I was in the car with him and he had, I don't know, Spotify or something, playing in kind of pulling the music from the interwebs. And, yeah, I mean, just like I said to him, did you ever imagine like 30 years ago that it would be possible for you in your car in the middle of the national park to be able to get like the whole of the world's musical library in your, not only your main stereo at home, but like your car that you're driving remotely? And he just said, oh, look, I had this retirement plan. I was going to like build like the Library of Alexandria, but in like classical music. And
it ruined that. Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I created a mixtape on a cassette. I thought it was just the coolest thing. And, you like wrote down the stuff and then that graduated to MP3s and things like that.
What was the first MP3 you ever, do you remember? The first you ever downloaded?
First I ever downloaded, I do remember. It was, that's really embarrassing. It was
Barbie Girl.
No, it was Limp Bizkit chocolate flavored starfish, I think, or something.
Oh god, my mum was going somewhere else. Sorry, you continue.
Limping with the biscuit, yeah, Limp Bizkit. It was like that era where I had a brief foray into that kind of new metal Limp Bizkit,
they're coming
Korn.
back. They've come back now.
I think Korn's an excellent band, actually.
Yeah, I mean, so it what's this? There was a certain phase of illegal downloading that felt like the frontier of the wild, wild west of the internet that doesn't exist today. So, and of course, like streaming, like Spotify and all that, like way more, kind of advanced as a technology and way more convenient and all that sort of stuff. But like,
you didn't have the connections back then to handle that.
No, but like it just more as a matter of principle, the jump from literally you have to go to the shop to buy a $30 CD or tape before that, or vinyl before that, to a world where you get your computer at home and you download. You don't even have to go to the shops.
Yeah.
And you download and you have the file and you can listen to it.
It's amazing.
Like unlimited, and it's free.
Well, I think this was the thing too, right? Like, you have to remember back in the day too, Australia didn't really get movies at the same release schedule as other areas, like in America and things. So a lot of the movies as well that you could download on torrent, they would either be, demo reels or something. You could get things earlier, right? And you could get different versions and different qualities of different cuts of things, right? So I remember that a lot of kind of getting that. And you could also get these like live performances that were hard to, and people would rate the different types of cuts they had and so on.
I used to do, just on that, I used to do bootleg trading, which is where you make like a mixtape of like a concert that someone's like recorded and you trade it with someone else who has another concert that you don't have.
Yeah, true fan.
And it was all done by post. So I'd be sending like discs off to like, Philadelphia or something.
That's amazing. But yeah, on the legality thing, right? So I don't know about you. Let's talk about that for a second, because was there any part of you that ever felt exposed, like you were gonna, the feds were gonna bust in and you were gonna be copped with a really big fine?
Not really, except I think it was probably later on in the piece, more so for movies and stuff. When they would, I think they would actually start to send letters out or something. They probably were meaningless, but like at that point, it was like, oh, okay, actually, someone is monitoring and there is some way of tracking me down, kind of thing. I never really felt
at risk.
Yeah, at risk. Like, and that was the beauty of it, because everyone had been like, this is the thing, like people had been pirating shit for donkey's years. Like you mentioned, the Asian supermarkets that would, give you the under the counter copy of whatever. But like, my dad, that's piracy. Like what my dad was doing, like renting, the
Is it though, if it's from a library?
Yeah, hell yeah. The upstanding gentleman that always comes in to get his mala from the library and walks out with
the perfect cover. Who's
Mozart,
this person counterfeiting classical music from the library?
But like that, there was a culture of that it was okay, or recording from the radio. Like there was this culture that, hey, it's all right if you're a fan, and as long as you buy a couple of their albums of, if you really like them, that there's a certain tolerance like within the industry, I think, for this, or at least they weren't like going after it, right? And I think people had, and it was harder, like people were still buying stuff, right? But then when it became so easy to do, that's when, there was this fear of like, initially there was no fear you get caught, but then they
did.
They were people starting to, but they were like kind of demonstrations of
that's
like,
what I mean.
Hey, you might be caught out.
I always had this fear that, everyone was doing it, but they'll try to make an example of one person to scare some people off, right? And I think that all you need is a few cases of hearsay of, oh, this person got fined $10,000, $20,000, then people won't do it, right?
Well, they used to do settlements out of court, so they used to just say, you pay us $2,000 and we won't proceed with this.
Oh, well, I mean, anyway, so there's all of that happening in the backdrop, but I think we're also missing one key thing, and that, like anything on the internet, huge amount of BitTorrent activity was for high definition porn. Like, for sure. I think that a lot of people, and I think that for guys and for younger guys too, porn's one of those things is like they're just collecting it. Like they collect, it's a Pokemon situation. They just want to collect it all. Like they're not even gonna watch these like 2 hour long porn, classics like Debbie Does Dallas and all that kind of stuff. Like these are actual motion pictures, and people they're just trying to rebuild the adult Library of Alexandria through torrents. Like I know people who just literally they bought huge storage just so they could scrape the internet of the porn. Right?
That just seems like such a 20th century way of going about it. But I do think the other side of this was, okay, so there's like the fact that it was free, right? So, okay, so there's like three broad benefits, right? We've talked about two of them. So the first is it's free. The second is it's probably like what you said where, you might get access to stuff that it's hard to get, even today, like my son watches this shitty show on, I think I can't remember what it's called. It's one of these emergency services US kind of TV shows. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and like even now you can't get season 7 in Australia, like anywhere. Like you can't even pay money to get it.
That's crazy.
It's like, and it's been released in the US, and it's like literally the only way to get it is to like illegally download it. But that was like everywhere, like 20 years ago. Now it's much better.
Yeah.
But the third benefit to a lot of the digital kind of side of it too, though, is just the convenience, right? So, it's like things like, I mean, anyone under the age of like 30 probably wouldn't remember, the whole VCR thing, right? You've got to rewind the video before you return to the shop. Like rewind? Like you
be kind, rewind. Remember those stickers that they
yeah. And same with cassette tapes, having to flip the tape.
Yeah.
But even like the MP3 CD, like,
that was
you can
amazing.
fit you can fit like 500 songs on one disc. Like that was just, and it just went from like the jump from, well, not necessarily analog because CDs were around for a long time before the internet, but like just the jump from kind of the old school to the digital mode of like it was so big and it was so huge, and the convenience was just such a revelation that even though streaming is much more novel now, like not much better technology now, the jump was just amazing. It was just this mind-blowing, like, and it was that first kind of, it was almost like a ChatGPT style. In fact, it was probably more than ChatGPT in terms of like blows your mind in terms of how good this thing is.
Yeah. And I think it's, there's another factor that we haven't included in that, as a benefit. And I think it is, to be honest with you, it's this civil disobedience, like the naughtiness of it, right? Like the underground nature where, and it's not just about acquiring the utility of acquiring this free content. As you talk about it, you share with people. There's community stuff about it. Like it felt very underground, but in a good way, in an exciting way, right? And like I think that was a little part of it as well. That it was somehow like sticking it to the man, right? Like getting it. And back then, these distribution channels and stuff, they were quite greedy. There wasn't like a moderately priced way to get these things, right? Like buying an album was very expensive, and movies and getting access to all this stuff. The theater run, and then waiting for it to come out on VHS or whatever, DVD, it was ages. Like it took a really long time, and so if you missed it at the cinema, you could be waiting like 6 months, right? It was a different time. But talking about Napster, didn't Napster, the creators of Napster, go to jail?
I don't know about that, but there was a big lawsuit. That was the one that Metallica, Lars Ulrich was, the face of. What did you think about that? Because of course, like Lars copped a lot of like backlash from it, but like, I mean, to be fair to Lars, like, I mean, he's basically someone saying, hey, like, this is literally stealing from us. Like, this is
we need
our artistic.
We need to cue a version of that. In Australia, every VHS or DVD had that. You wouldn't steal a car. You wouldn't steal a candy bar. Why steal a movie? Like.
Do you know the irony of that ad is that they use a font in that ad that they pirated?
I mean, it's so good, and like that ad, I just remember that all the time. But on the whole Lars thing and the artistry, I do get it, but I think it was short-sighted. I think that when you're one of the biggest heavy metal bands in the world, it's probably hard to see that. But this idea of more people consuming and more fans consuming content is actually the real goal, the appreciation, and then forcing the market to actually provide a product that's within reach for people that they don't mind paying. Because I think a lot of people, especially older people, like say, you know, when we were going through our experience, we were young, right? We didn't have anything. We were teenagers. But if you said to our parents, I think you would struggle to find parents of our generation that would be comfortable with pirating, right? Like they wouldn't do that because they would be worried about the message it sends. They'd be worried about being involved in the slippery slope stuff. And so it would always be better to provide people with a legitimate option. And that's kind of what streaming services have done. They've made it cheap enough that you'd rather just do it above board, right? Because you can still pirate now, but no one does.
Yeah, but look, I think the back to the Metallica thing, like I think if the message of Metallica was, well, they were kind of the wrong people to deliver the message, right? Like I think if it was some new up and coming struggling artist saying, hey, like this is killing us, like we're not getting signed, or you know, we can't make money from our works or whatever, then you know they'd probably, but it was just the behemoth of Metallica. But it did change music in a few ways, right? And this sort of tangential to the streaming thing, right? So the first way I think it changed music is the revenue model. The business model had to evolve, and it took them a long time to evolve the business model, right? So it used to be all about, you know, actually selling like album sales, right? They used to be the way to make money, and you have this weird situation where it's not, well, it's actually the way it's mostly been in history, but it's changed recently where tours were just the way to sell the albums. So you do a concert to break even kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then like you're going to sell some albums, like because people are talking about you touring and stuff, and you just do the concert for that reason.
No. It's like the promotion, right? Like it used to, you know, the promotion has totally flipped columns where it's actually, you know, getting the free streams out there is your promotion now.
And like the irony is that those artists, like the legacy acts, have like that. Oh, they've got it made because they've got like 2 bites at the cherry. Like they had the album sales back in the day, and now they're able to charge like $500 a ticket for their stadium gigs.
This is the irony of these bands, like people like Bono or Roger Waters. Like they have benefited so much from the capitalist approach of you know, the music industry of where it's come from, but they're such, you know, socialists now, right? Like you act like they're not giving their music away for free. You know, they're not doing these things.
But I guess the other thing is streaming, piracy, and then the streaming's like continued the tradition, right? It's changed the way we consume music. So the album is not a thing anymore. Like it's, I mean, yes, they do release albums, but I think the fact that you invest $30 to buy like the album that you're excited to get in your hands and listen to forces you almost to listen to that on repeat for the next however long. And it just commits it to memory, like almost in a way that, you know, music is a lot more disposable nowadays.
What about the big artists though? Like say even like Tay-Tay, right? People are still buying her album and listening to it.
I don't think they're buying her album. I think they're streaming it, but I don't think no one's buying it.
Maybe not. They're consuming it as an album.
I don't think that's how the majority are consuming it. So I think, you know, the majority of people would be buying the latest Metallica album or the latest, you know, any of those artists from like Pearl Jam or whatever from that era, and before it, they would buy that album and they would know every single song on the album. I think now, you know, if you've got to go to the undisputed most popular artist on the planet to find an artist that could possibly get people to listen to their whole album, and then even then it's still probably only the top 3 songs, then, you know, you're really stretching it. Whereas back in the day, it was like every artist, like their fans would do that. Like it was a lot more in, right? So of course this is a spectrum, and they had sold singles and they had radio play, and, you know, so it wasn't quite as strictly, but like the album was definitely much more curated and you know, committed to experience.
Yeah. It was part of the narrative, right? Part of the artistic product of it all. And that's definitely fallen away. But at the same time, like, I don't want to paint it out as all rosy. Like, there were some very artistic albums and things, and other people in the pop sphere, it wasn't anything like that. They didn't write their own songs. The albums were full of filler and just trying to get a few hits. So even they were doing it back then without the, you know, the technology aligning.
Now as well with like publishing rights. So what I understand now is previously you get a lot more royalties as the performer, but now they don't pay, like streaming services and things like that don't pay the owners of the actual recording. They pay the publisher, like the songwriters so now they have all these kind of really weird commercial arrangements where like the songwriting credits actually are kind of negotiated as part of the income like flows. So if the like record company wants to get like they'll find a way to capture that part of the revenue stream in a way that maybe in the past the artists themselves would have had more, you know, influence and sort of say, like, you know, there's some interesting examples, and it goes the other way too, right? So you have these like examples of like big acts, right? Like a Beyonce, for example, who basically might have a team of songwriters working with her, and she might have very little contribution. Like she might like tweak some inflection of her voice and say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to get a songwriting credit," and then others don't even get a credit, like even though they wrote the thing. So there's all these weird things that happen.
What I've always struggled to understand is like the stuff that goes on where people purchase the back book. You know, like again, picking on Taylor Swift, where the music was kind of all bought up, and instead of taking the hit on it, she re-recorded it. Right? Like, I mean, I don't even know how that's even possible.
Well, it's the difference between the owning the publishing rights and the recordings, right? So I think in those particular, like I might have mixed up some of the words, but I think she didn't own the actual recordings, but she did own they're her songs, right? So she was totally entitled to re-record them, and she did that, and like that was a pretty, like, to her credit, like that was probably the best commercial thing to ever happen to her, because she just had like.
But who like are they paying? Who are they paying to acquire the back book?
Well, because initially it's all belongs to the record company. So, you know, Taylor Swift once upon a time was not the world's biggest musician, you know, performer, right? Taylor Swift was this like naive 15-year-old once upon a time, right? Some powerful record executive was able to negotiate. You know, they had the leverage over her, right? And so that's how most music contracts work, I think, where they have, you know, the record company like takes the risk, so they retain, you know, as much of the, you know, commercial benefit, and then they get sold.
Unless you hold out like Guns N' Roses.
And then they get sold on and on, and, you know, and then they, you know, appreciate in value and so on. So,
interesting.
Yeah. But what do you think of like, okay, you asked a question like getting caught, right? But what do you actually think of the ethics of it? Like informed, maybe you could sort of tackle this in two ways, back like what you thought at the time when you were doing it and what you think about it now.
I mean, I always, but even back then, I always knew it was wrong. This, you know, this stealing thing, right? Like I knew it was wrong, and like I said, some part of me was excited at that appeal of it. But it was because it was, you know, it's kind of like this idea of the faceless multinational corporation, and right, and like they're already exploiting everyone and making these outrageous profits. And then in your mind, you're doing something almost rebellious by chipping away or taking or not adding to that sense. So there was definitely that kind of flavor back then. And now, you know, I definitely feel, you know, like I would not. Well, okay, put it this way: that dynamic that we spoke about between child and parent, I'm on the parent side now. So I would never want my children to see me stealing, right? So that's probably the main blocker for me.
You know, so you said you knew it was wrong back in the day. I mean, I kind of knew it was wrong too, but in the same way as like it's wrong to jaywalk across an empty street in suburbia. You know, like there's certain things which are, yes, technically, you know, either against the law or they're not. You know, they're not sort of technically right to do or whatever, but like morally or ethically, like it's okay.
I think you thought it was okay, like morally.
Okay, this is how I rationalized it: is that being a consequentialist as I was as a 13-year-old pirating, like the amount of like they got more money out of me for me being able to pirate than if I wasn't able to pirate. And what I mean by that is if I could not like go and listen to, let's say, I don't know, a handful of Metallica's back catalogue, right, from the 80s through to sort of early 90s. If I wasn't able to listen to those tracks for free, I wouldn't have then gone to the record store and bought their albums, bought the t-shirt, gone to the concert. And so for like that initial like taste in that artist, I then actually bought shit from them, right? And, you know, it fostered an interest in music that I wouldn't have had because I wouldn't have gone out and bought those albums. I wouldn't have made those investments. So for me, it was an extension of listening to the radio or getting exposed to music in a promotional sort of way. And I think, to this day, like if it weren't for like being able to pirate music, movies maybe is a different situation.
I'll wait to tap in movies.
But for music, I would say pretty strongly, like in a world where the $30 album was still a thing, I've spent more money as a result of like being able to download some sneaky, tracks and albums than I would have if it was a solid, like the way the music industry, or record labels like wanted it to be, right?
Yeah, well, I see what you mean. Like, is there tapping into unmet kind of need because of the promotional aspect of it? I get all that, but I also know for every kind of Metallica example that you use, there's stuff that I downloaded and I never paid $1 to that artist.
Yeah, but that's you just trying before you buy, right? And decide not to buy.
No, as in I don't know, take the Limp Bizkit example. I never, my relationship with that was like totally downloaded. It didn't turn me into a fan to want to see them perform. It didn't, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I never spent money. Fred Durst couldn't buy that new cap. He wanted. See what I mean? Like there are many examples that fall in that column. And then maybe like in a collective sense, I can understand what you're saying, but no, I think a lot of people, and if we move to movies and TV shows, it's even worse.
Okay, so like it is somewhat dependent on your own individual experience, right? So mine was still quite respectful of like the artist thing, right? So if I like, and like I wouldn't like every artist, right? But to do this, but if there was something like I would pay my respect to them, right? And I would own. Like, I own more CDs than I would have owned, like, if it weren't for piracy. Now, the other effect as well, like, I don't know if you remember, but, like, in the early 2000s, like, CDs became way cheap, right? So there was this halo effect for everybody. So even if you wanted to be legal, you could still get the benefit of, like, a $10 CD as opposed to a $30 CD. So it had these, like, extra, like, side benefits or whatever. But, I don't know, people were taping stuff before, like this wasn't completely new, and I think that fandom thing was still about. But movies and stuff, like I think that for me was more like, are they lifting their game? Maybe that's a bit harder to kind of sell with the whole, Warner Brothers is gonna do better from me, like in the long run, if I pirate this Matrix 1, 2 and 3 kind of thing. But like what I would say though is they had some of the punishment they got commercially was well earned. Like the fact that they were so hell-bent on like crushing this thing, and it took them so long to realize that, hey, the fucking internet's not going away and you need to get on the horse, otherwise, you're going to miss the spaceship sort of thing. And yeah, I just think that hubris of them, that arrogance of them, I kind of don't feel guilt. I don't feel any kind of, I don't feel any.
That's what I was saying, right? Like you're stealing from a faceless corporation that has been exploiting their artists and you for a very long time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of definitely how I felt about it, and that part like kind of excited me as well. What I would say though on the TV and movie side is that a lot of it wasn't. I think it ruined the experience for a lot of movies, right? Because quite often, especially if you wanted something quite quickly from its release, the quality might be very questionable, right? And you're then starting to watch it on computer monitors, which aren't ideal. And so it created this kind of like smaller frame experience where perhaps like you would put up with certain levels of quality as well. And so I think that definitely was a bit different. Like it didn't, because, like home cinema was getting really crazy. We talked about Jurassic Park the other week. That was the quintessential home cinema, like watch it in a dark room, lights, subwoofer blaring. And then a couple of years later, you're trying to watch this pixelated shit and you're still watching it. Like your standards just dropped and you were okay with it because it was free. You know what I mean?
Do you have a memory of like a certain age or moment or year rather that you just stopped, you went either cold turkey or you just phased out of like, and you stopped downloading full stop?
Yeah, I remember for me because it kind of stopped for me on a particular computer. And then I went into this wilderness where I actually didn't have a computer for a while. Like I had my work laptops and then I had mobile devices. And yeah, so that period was, this like 2010?
Yeah, so I have I have a pretty sharp memory of when I stopped. It's funny you say, like, I also ditched having a computer, like for, well, I had a computer, but I didn't use it. It was old. And it would have been around that same time, like that late 2000s, early 2010s, that like I didn't have a computer. And so I was like, all just 100% on my phone. Like that was my only personal device plus whatever I had at work. But I was still downloading like torrents. Like I had the app on my Android. You know, I don't know if Apple allows torrents, but you know, on the Android, you know, of course you've got like, that's one of the bonuses of best things about Android, right? You can have all these like cool apps like the Pirate Bay and all that. But you could also, like, I could send it to my Samsung TV as well, like, and it would just play it. So I would do everything on my phone, almost like what you do with like a Google TV or whatever now. But like back in the day, I would just do that, sitting from my lounge, and I'd download the torrents on my phone, and it would be just be like epic. And I used to watch like heaps of shit like that. I think, to be fair, like when did Netflix like streaming? That would have been, but that would have been before 2015. That would have been sometime between 2010 and 2015, right? Yeah. So House of Cards, I remember that was probably the big launch show. So that would have been like, what, 2012, 2013, 14, something like that. And that's when it became viable not to like, or it started to become viable not to like have to download illegally. But for me, the hard stop, and it was a pretty hard stop for me, like where all my behaviors, patterns were still very much like, I was still want to download shit, right? But like I stopped because I was going for a security clearance, and one of the questions was do you download illegally? And you know, so okay, well, the key to these things is you've got to be honest, because if you're not, then the lie is worse than the you know, the sin sort of thing. And then I had to estimate a value of how much stuff I downloaded. And I thought, oh shit, I better stop this, otherwise I'm never going to get a security clearance. So anyway,
2013, by the way.
2013, yeah. So by 2015, I was, is it off the wagon or on the wagon? I always confuse that one. Yeah.
I think if you're talking about like booze and addiction, you're back on the wagon is like you're sober.
Yeah. Well, works both ways with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, and my memories of torrent, I was never, because I had an iPhone as well, it didn't play that nice with torrenting and things like that. Or if it did, I wasn't inclined to do that. So yeah, once the home computer died for me, that just stopped completely. You know, this, and I still visualize, you know, you leave it on all night and you see like your little bars, your progress bars, pages and pages of progress bars just kind of magically get better and better overnight. And, you know, like the directories of these movies and stuff, like, and then you come over to your friend's house and they'd have a USB hard drive and you could copy them and things like, oh man, those were the days. But yeah, nothing good lasts forever.
I did earlier this evening go through my list of subscriptions. Like, you know, all these streaming services, there's like, you know, $15 a month for that.
Yeah.
$17 for this other thing. And, you know, you add them all up and suddenly you're like spending $300 a month kind of thing. And I just went through, I just deleted, like I said, oh, you mean to say I've had like a subscription to that streaming service for the past like 12 months? I haven't even opened it. I didn't even know I had it. And, you know, inevitably it's like you sign up because there's like one season of one show that you start watching and then you forget halfway to finish it or whatever. Anyway, so I got rid of a whole bunch, but it just made me like pine for like, maybe it's still a thing. It's just I'm just sucked into streaming, but like just the simplicity of like, just spend like $1 a show, like just, okay, here's your season of whatever, insert, you know, top rated kind of TV show or whatever, and just literally pay $1 per episode. Just maybe that would be a better experience.
Yeah, I mean, they're becoming more like channels now, right? You know, Netflix has a home screen. It pushes you to certain content, their releases, there's all this kind of stuff. We've lost that culture. I think we've lost that, you know, I was talking about the hard disk back in the day. You would kind of get the recommendations. You know, you got to watch this. I've got this series. Let me give it to you. You know, and you'd make your way through it. But hey, look, even with TV shows, the JB Hi-Fi culture where you could get box sets, that was a game changer as well. Again, the feeling of just like, oh, I have like the whole of The Wire on DVD in this box set, you know, and I can watch it. Like that was amazing as well. And it was for, you know, relatively cheap prices.
I think though that, you know, there were, you know, the classic kind of water cooler moment, right, with free-to-air TV where, you know, there were shows, and there probably are still a couple, but very fleeting and rare now.
It's in reality TV now.
Yeah, and just like shows where, yeah, you can be in the office and talk about, oh, did you see last night's episode or whatever? And the thing is, like, even shows like Squid Game, right, which is, you know, what one of the most popular series on Netflix, right? And probably most people who are interested in it are going to watch it, right? Or will have watched it. But, like, it just doesn't work because it's like it's the whole season all available at the same time, and everyone's at different levels of, like, watching it. And, hey, you're not supposed to, like, talk about it because you might spoil it for someone who hasn't watched it. And it's just, it doesn't work. Whereas there's some beauty in, like, if you're not up to date, that's on you, so fuck off, you know, if you don't want to hear the conversation.
The last thing that I think was like that from the streaming world was a Game of Thrones. People would actually, like, you know, stay relatively up to date on the episodes, and they would talk about it, right? And there'd be a time pressure to watch it so that you wouldn't have spoilers. So that's probably the last one I remember having that same kind of collective moment, water cooler conversation.
Of course, sport now is, like, immune to all of this, right? So sport will probably be the...
Sport's dying though, Andy. Like, the viewership, the younger people aren't watching sport.
Well, I don't know if that's true though.
It is in a lot of cases, because a lot of traditional sports, they're made for a slower pacing. Like, you know, your crickets, even tennis. They're struggling with tennis because it's too long. You can't get young people to sit down and watch a 4-hour tennis match, right? Like,
well, I mean, like Test cricket, I kind of understand that, but, you know, I think it just seems to me like, I think there's probably some traditional sports like cricket and tennis, and, you know, I know baseball in the US is having the same issue where they're not able to, they're not surviving the faster pace that people are used to. But then equally, like, if you say to me like football, like, as, you know, soccer, like, or rugby league or AFL, or, like, they seem to be as popular as ever. Like, NFL, like, all of these games seem to be, like, I don't see, I mean, certainly the TV rights and stuff like that are through the roof, sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe. But I do know that it's becoming a problem, and directly related to younger viewers who expect faster pacing, right? So
yeah, you know, they're watching YouTube Shorts. So if you can't find out who won the cricket match in 5 seconds, let alone 5 days,
it's like the 2020 Big Bash, right? So that's a direct innovation to try to address this problem. You know, more action, shorter period. Same with tennis, you know, like UTS, and they're trying to innovate, but they know they really need to do that, right? They need to make the games quicker, faster paced to hold attention. Where do you think piracy, like the future of piracy, is going? Like, what are we going to be concerned with in the next leap forward, right? Like, we've talked about, you know, in like music and shows and things like that. You know, there's always been counterfeit goods. We haven't really spoken about that a lot, but where and in some ways, like, technology is being counterfeited from, like, mainly from America by China.
The best thing about piracy is that it's the threat of piracy and the threat of it coming back, which keeps all of these gatekeepers of media on their toes, not to screw us consumers, right? So it's the threat of, if you go too hard and you represent bad value, you can't just, like, rest on the fact that there's no alternative, because the alternative is essentially free. Everything you want for free. And I think that's a good thing for us consumers who like to think we're doing the right thing. But it's interesting you said the future of piracy. I mean, I know that you might be talking to a broader suite of, you know, products and things here than what we've talked about tonight, but I do just want to, like, say, like, there, I had a colleague who said to me very recently, actually, this isn't from like 5 years ago, said, he's just cancelled all his streaming services because they're too expensive, and he's found one that basically pirates it for only $6.99 a month.
That's awesome. No, I'm just going to think this is counterfeit piracy, all this stuff. This will be around forever, and it has been around forever, right? Like, you know, it's always been a thing of people trying to reproduce or pose something of high value, right? And I just wonder how that will evolve in the technology, even with AI and stuff, right? Like, I think that we'll see a lot of that, like the ability to reverse engineer things or essentially copy them, but at a local level, right? Like, maybe that's what the future will be, where you can have an AI, like, are we that far away from saying putting a piece of technology into some kind of scanner and using AI to analyze it and then sending directions to a 3D printer that then recreates the product? right? Like things like that. Or even at a less physical way, where certain large language models or certain other things, certain IP related things can be, you can pirate them.
Well, I think that, also the issue of with AI, right? Like AI is essentially a massive like piracy engine, right?
Yeah.
I think it's
just different enough that it's not piracy.
Yeah, it just basically, I mean, there's nothing new in anything that any AI output gives you other than just like, it's an average of what everyone's ever done before. Like, especially like when you look at some of these AI artists, like, I don't know, have you seen the one that one of the Spotify charts, there's this AI, like someone's uploaded some AI band and they're like almost the top of the Spotify charts. It's just
I didn't know it was real or not. Is it real?
It's just, yeah, I mean, like this kind of stuff, it's just derivative of Leonard Skinner, but like, from, all the
reconstituted.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and yeah, it's just, yeah. But anyway, all right. Well, over and out. I've got another few seasons of South Park to catch up on from my 1999 season.
I always thought to myself, when The Simpsons finally stops, I'm going to buy the box set. But they're still going, and I miss that boat now.
Yeah, you need a couple of those IKEA.
Yeah.
What are their
Billy.
The Billy bookcase. A few Billy bookcases for them. Yeah. All right. Catch you later.
All right.